Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
This is my dilemma every day. A smart person knows what to say. A wise person knows whether or not to say it. Morning, everybody. Here comes Kate Smith, and God bless America. Followed by a Patriot with our Pledge of Allegiance on a Monday. And good morning. Yes, please, God bless America, my home, sweet home. Welcome to Zeb at the Ranch on a Monday, January 27th already. Wow. And brought to you by our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations serving you with all the tires you need and the best in service right there on the farm and dairy and ranch, too. Don't forget that, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. And along with Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. And, of course, Greystone Crossing Senior Living at 1221 21st Street in Hayburn. Seniors living the good life with friends. And right now we're going to take one of our friends on the air and have our Pledge of Allegiance. Good morning.
Well, good morning again, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Attaboy, Wheels, good job. And right now, let's scoot to the weather forecast, brought to you by Roger and the crew over at K&R Rental. You better believe it, they're there to serve you at 256 South, 600 West of Hayburn. And they've got the best of tools and equipment for you to finish any kind of a project, construction, whatever. Not sure what you need? Well, don't worry about it. Call them. They'll help you, 678-3122. On the Burley Paul Highway, K&R Rental. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Looks like increasing clouds for today and a slight chance of rain or snow for tomorrow. Here's a look at your weather forecast. We are looking at partly to mostly cloudy skies for today. Winds out of the west at about 14 miles an hour. Gusts as high as 25 miles an hour. Looking at a high of 43 for tonight. Mostly cloudy skies with a low of 32 as we round the corner for tomorrow. Chance of rain and snow showers in the afternoon. Mostly cloudy skies. We are expecting a high of 43. New snow accumulations of less than a half an inch possible. For tomorrow night, chance of rain and or snow showers, mostly cloudy skies, low of 32. By Wednesday, partly sunny, 40. And then by Thursday, mostly cloudy, 42. That's look at your weather forecast for Zeb at the Ranch.
Oh, my. For long and short-term rental on equipment that you need, tools that you need to finish any job, I urge you to get a hold of our friends at K&R Rental. 256 South, 600 West of Hayburn. Like I said, they open the doors early in the morning to serve you. Number to call, 678-3122. Want to also take a moment to say howdy, like Minnie Pearl did at the Daryl's Cleaners. Great, great friends of mine, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. And, it's not that far around the corner to think about spring cleaning. I know, Zab, we're still in the middle of winter. I know we are, but, you want to be prepared. And all your drapes and your curtains and your coats and everything, take care of them. They're expensive. Why replace when you can just make sure they're refurbished? Dry cleaning at its best at Daryl's Cleaners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. You stop in and see my friends today. One more quick word, and then we're going to start calls coming in, I hope, and I want to acknowledge our dear friends at Ramsey Heating and Electric, and of course they're located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. All all your heating, cooling, and electrical needs. They've got it. You better believe it, with almost 7 decades of experience in serving you. Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. Number to call, 678-0459. You get a hold of Ramsey Heating and Electric today. Wow, the impeachment farce continues today. And Saturday, the Republicans took over in a rebuffing and rebuting, whatever you want to say, the Democrat lies. I did my own personal check on things and items that were stated by the Democrats, and I was pretty close. I got to tell you, folks, I was pretty close to, because I didn't watch all the trial, I should say. I was pretty close in the number of lies and falsehoods the Democrats issued during their 3 days of testimony. And I was off by about 4 or 5, of which I probably didn't hear or see those on the television. But they were way up into the teens of lies about President Trump. Now, I want Trump to get reelected. I don't want to have the Democrats in. I don't want to have a complete transition of sanity from an energy program that has made us the biggest and best and most powerful in the world to going back to prehistoric times of relying on wind and solar. Just the same as what Idaho Power is trying to tell us is going to be such a goody two-shoes thing. It's not. And I'll tell you what, this Adam Schiff twisted and turned and fabricated the facts. And in one day on Saturday, the Republicans blew away a lot of the accusations out of the water. I mean, boom, lie, falsehood. And my forecast is this, that with the way the Democrats are operating this so-called impeachment trial, I'm going to make a prediction that this will be gone and put in the grave and dirt thrown on it by February 15th. I know. I'm giving a little bit more time than most. Some say it'll be over in the next couple of days, but I'm going to say the 15th. And hopefully the day after Valentine's Day, the Democrats will be sitting there with what they deserve. Nothing. Nothing. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I want to remind you about Denny's Restaurant. Oh, my, America's Diner. Wow. The new menu choices on there, like the Parmesan chicken sizzling skillet. And then, of course, they've got those strawberry crepes. Oh, my wife loves those strawberry crepes for breakfast. Absolutely out of sight. Dynamite. Great. At Denny's Restaurant. You're going to love all the food choices. You're going to love the people that are serving you. And, of course, it's all at Denny's Restaurant. America's Diner at 611 North Overland in Burley. And the other location, 291 Pole Line Road in Twin Falls. And that is, of course, the home of Zeb's Lunch Bunch. And we had a wonderful, wonderful lunch bunch last week at Denny's Restaurant. All right, callers, give me a jingle, 436-2244. Want to just get this out of the way. And so the Times News, I know they are not very astute in finding out things about groups and or people that they want to denigrate in their newspaper. But in the cheers and the jeers section Saturday in the Times News, a paper that absolutely wants everybody on their bandwagon, but none of them can play an instrument, they really blasted some people that I've had on my program many, many times, the Heartland Institute back in Chicago. And the Times News blasting them with statements like this regarding climate change and global warming. The mainstream scientific community agrees there is huge evidence that greenhouse gases from the burning of coal, oil, and gas are causing the world to warm in a dangerous manner. That's not true. That is not true. of the scientists that the left, wanted to put into numbers. That's where they're coming up with their percentages. But in general, we are seeing more and more and more scientists jump to the forefront and say, wait a minute, climatic change is part of God's plan for this universe. And now we're starting to go the other way with more of a cooling trend. So for the Times News, without even checking on the validity or the greatness of the Heartland Institute, and they've done a lot of good work in this country, to slam them and run them down, I thought, they call them a fringe group. And I think that was very, very unprofessional of the Times News. But what else is new? Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Zeb. How many solar panels would it take to run an aircraft carrier? And if we went totally green like these blue balls want to do, our aircraft carriers and the rest of our ships would not have enough fuel to stretch around the world and keep in touch with what's going on out there with our enemies.
Well, Tony, your point is so relevant and yet so simple. I totally agree with you. Do these nutcases on the left realize solar and wind is what they're pushing for, and that's going to be our electrical grid? That's going to create an aura of greatness for our farming and agriculture? That's going to help make sure that our maintenance of our military is on standby and ready to go at the drop of a hat? That our transportation system across the United States is going to be able to deliver the goods to the consuming public? Wow, Tony, these people are just basically pretty dumb.
Well, the whole problem is they haven't faced the realities of what would happen if we went to solar energy and all that stuff. This country would evaporate.
Well, Tony...
And they have no idea because they've never been hurt.
Yeah.
Because of our energy policies in this country, we've had the greatest of everything.
You know,
these people haven't been hurt enough yet.
Now, I agree with you, but I look at agriculture and the severity of what doing totally away with fossil fuels and relying on solar and wind. I mean, the severity of what would happen to our agricultural programs alone, and people not being able to buy. They don't want people to have private transportation. They want to just eliminate anybody living out in the rural areas and basically move to town for the use of communes to live in and buses to get where you're going. But the enormity of canceling a very efficient energy and fuel program just leads me to say and think that these people are absolutely, they deserve to be committed, Tony. They're not normal.
Oh, I know. They are abnormal. Like I say, these people in this condition haven't been hurt enough to understand what would happen if our food supply was almost eliminated because we don't have the tractors to cultivate the ground. I mean, Americans are spoiled, a lot of them. They haven't been damaged yet.
Well, let me ask you this, Tony, about the global warming / conflict with climate change and everything else. Are people healthier in colder climates or warmer climates?
Well, you got to have warmer climates for the crops to grow.
That's right.
You can't grow them in refrigerators.
That's right. You're looking at healthier conditions in warmer climates anyway, and for man, silly little man, to put his hand on the thermostat and try to alter, change, and destroy natural climate changes that only the good Lord controls, that's complete idiocy. Tony, God bless you. How's Mary doing this morning?
Oh, she's doing pretty good. She's hanging in there. You know her, she's a tough Tennessean.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I'd never want to challenge her. You go give her a kiss on the cheek and tell her I said hello. All right. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. Don't forget our friends at Dino's Septic Service. And I really do mean our friends serving you with a job that you and I don't want to do. Wheels, if you could boost the feed line to me just a fraction, my dear friend, I'd appreciate that. Dino's Septic Service, septic tank pumping, backhoe services, septic inspections, liquid waste removal, sewer and sink drain lines clean, all of this and everything else that you need. Please don't hesitate, call them. They are really, really good people. Fast, fare, friendly service, 436-6526 or 678-1638. Remember the name, Dino Septic Service, serving you with a big truck that says smells cargo on the way. They're really good folks at Dino Septic Service. All right, calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I wanted to just comment a little bit about a tragedy that happened yesterday, and it just absolutely has set the athletic and sports world on its ear. One of the all-time great basketball players, whether you liked him or whether you didn't like him, whether you admired his talents or you just didn't care, Kobe Bryant was one of the greatest basketball players ever to set his feet on a gym floor. And it was really sad. Kobe Bryant was with his 13-year-old daughter, along with 7 other people, 9 people in a helicopter crash that killed everybody on board. And it's so sad. Kobe was 41 years of age, daughter 13. They were on the way to one of the younger daughter's, basketball tournaments. And he leaves behind 3 other daughters and his wife. But very sad helicopter crash, taking the life of one of the greatest basketball players ever, Kobe Bryant. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Zeb. That is so sad. I heard about that just a minute or two ago. I wonder what your take is on an article we heard on the news last week about President Trump's withdrawing the water quality standards for streams and lakes and so forth. Do you know the one I mean?
I do, but wait a minute. Let me stop you right there. He's not opening up the reservoir, if you will, for sewage dumping or any kind of chemical dumping or anything. No, he's withdrawing a lot of the silly, frivolous rules that put people in jail and people lost property. And we've had some of those people on my program, especially the family over in Wyoming, that jumped through all the hoops in Wyoming to have a little natural pond built on their property that would help serve their livestock and also the wildlife. They went through the proper channels in Wyoming with the state, got all the permits, but yet later, after everything was done, these people with the EPA came in and fined him $72,000 a day until he tore the pond out.
That was the kind of thing I was hoping you would say. Because that's what I told my son when he told me about it, that there were he said, clear back to 1970. And I said, I thought that the EPA had gotten too ridiculously strict.
Yep.
And that a lot of people were suffering because those laws were repressive or oppressive.
Well, Linda...
And I said... that's what I tried to tell him. I actually have family members who do not like him.
Well, I'll tell you something else.
I love them, but I cannot tell them.
Just last week, Linda, I had a representative on from the Pacific Legal Foundation that's working on a couple of cases, and one of them in regards to the cutback in some of these insidious and idiotic water charges that were put through and put forth during the Obama administration. And I don't know if you caught the program or not, but literally, if you went in your backyard and took a shovel and dug a little hole for your grandkids or your nieces and nephews, and you filled it up with water, and so they could float their little boats, that really was under jurisdiction by the EPA and those other organizations, that they could come in and they could nail you financially and with possibility of arrest for tampering and building waterways to divert water into another location.
That's the thing that I thought had happened, and I am so glad to hear it. I did get a piece of news the other day that President Trump gave a beautiful pro-life, anti-abortion speech.
Yes.
At the
Right to Life.
Women's Rights March.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, President Trump is the first president to attend, and I admired what he said. And I think it was 10 days ago, we had one of the spokespeople for that March on My Radio program, and she had mentioned that President Trump was going to be there. He did, and he gave a great speech, and I admire him for standing up for the right to life. It's about time we had a president that has the moxie, and quite frankly, if you'll excuse the terminology, the guts to do what's right.
Yep. Me too. I admire him, and I appreciate what he did for the water quality. But all the other guys can see on the other side is, all that wonderful protection is withdrawn, and it's terrible. And they just, gosh, how do you talk to them? I don't know.
You can't talk to these people or reason.
Listen.
Yeah, you can't talk or reason to people on the left. They are hell-bent for trying to change everything in their favor, and that 7-letter word comes into the conversation, Linda. They want complete control over everything you do.
Yeah, and I don't know that they look very deep into it. But that's just what I thought was he took those really awful, oppressive, ridiculous laws away that are so stupid.
Well, I couldn't agree more.
So much for all that you do, Zeb, and Deanne, and Wheels, too.
Well, thank you to the greatest voice with the national anthem anywhere around, Linda Crofts. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.
Bless you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
You know, at lunch bunches, that last lady, Linda Croft, comes to sing the national anthem, and I got to admit, I was almost moved to tears last Thursday, because we do the pledge. Well, first of all, Jimmy Flowers does the prayer so eloquently and then leads everybody in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Linda sings the national anthem. Well, I'm standing there, and all of a sudden my eyes kind of caught a glimpse of some of the people in the bigger portion of the restaurant literally stop eating. And some of them standing up, some of them sitting down, put their hands over their heart and followed along. And it just gives you a real sense of, yeah, that's the way to do things. And for those people that were in the restaurant last Thursday, God bless you, that was really nice. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Don't forget our Idaho Legislative Update today, sponsored by Handy Truck Lines at 10:30. And I believe Senator Kelly Anthon's going to be calling in today. Right now, I'm going to give away a dozen cookies. Boy, I love the cookies from Sophie's Chatterbox, and you'll love them too. And if you're the lucky winner, don't forget that all you need to do is call them and tell them when you become in for your cookies at Sophie's Chatterbox, 530 East Street on the square in Rupert. And here's the question, and the first person that calls in with the right answer is going to receive the dozen cookies. And it's an easy one for all of us that are a little bit older, and we can remember TV shows from the past, like the Western called The Big Valley. The Big Valley, and the star basically was Barbara Stanwyck as the matriarch of that ranch. But what were the three sons' names on the TV show? Not the actors' real names, but the characters that they played. What were the three brothers' names on the TV show The Big Valley? Please give me a call right now to win the cookies at 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. What were the character names of the three brothers on the Big Valley TV show, that Western back in the 60s? Remember that? Give me a call quickly, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Hi there. It was Nick, Jared, and Heath.
And who's this?
This is Ruth Thrall.
Would you spell that last name for me, Ruth?
Yes, T as in Thomas, H-R-A-L-L.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, Ruth, it was, again, who were the brothers?
Nick, Jared, and Heath.
Now, I'm going to ask you, you won the cookies, but I'm going to ask you this. Which one, you've already won the cookies, but which one was the lawyer?
Jared.
That a girl. Nothing gets by Ruth, I'll tell you what. You get a hold of Sophie's and you've won the cookies. Congratulations.
Okay, thank Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. That's right. It was Jared that was the attorney, and Nick and Heath, they stayed on the ranch with Mom. Barbara Stanwyck. Calls welcome 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Did you hear, and if you didn't, it's really interesting, that the Des Moines Iowa Register newspaper has selected for their pick to get the presidential nomination on the Democratic Party, they've picked Elizabeth Warren. Gumby. I could not believe some of the reasons why they picked Elizabeth Warren, but I heard some of them this morning at 4 a.m. on a newscast. The paper, the Des Moines Register, said that she, Elizabeth Warren, would bring truth to America. This is laughable. Remember, she said she was part Indian, and she's gone through other various stages of lies and trying to live up to the lies, student loans and all this kind of thing. But she is going to bring truth to America. She's lied about so much and so many items during her possible career as to becoming the President of the United States. And then the paper said that she, Elizabeth Warren, will push for an unequal America to be better. An unequal America to be better. Now, I would like my callers, you're a sharp audience, I would like you to call me and tell me that what is going on in this country is so unequal, and what does it need a Democrat of socialist bent to try to change? What is so unequal about America? You work for what you receive, hopefully, if you're working, and what you receive should be enough with your personal responsibility to take care of yourself and the incentive to do bigger and better things. Again, going back to your responsibility, you can do whatever you want to do and be as good or as financially independent as you want to be. But to say that she's going to push for an unequal America almost makes it sound like you will only get this, nobody else will exceed this, you're all the same. That really bothers me. What are your thoughts? I don't want to be the same. No, I want to work as hard as I want to work, and I want to try to achieve and attain whatever I want to attain. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Bell. You know, I was driving, I couldn't call in, but when Tony and you was talking about the climate change going to electrical,
yeah.
Have you seen the protocol of the charging stations to charge up these electric cars? It's a generator run by a diesel motor.
Uh-huh.
Let that sink in.
Yeah, well, what does that tell you, though? I mean, I don't want to see a world, George. I don't want to see a world that's bad enough what we have already, with those ugly, cancerous sticks called windmills on every piece of turf, on every hill, totally ruining the aesthetic value of our beautiful, beautiful state and our nation, and then all these miles upon miles of solar panels, and I don't want to see that, George.
No, it's just... they're just going backwards. You know, I just hope the United States realize that before we go over the edge.
You know, you've been around making things, building things, and machinery all your life. George, do these people on the left realize at all, you never hear them talk about it, realize at all the extremely enormous trillions and trillions of dollars it's going to cost to try to go on a green energy program for electricity instead of where we are right now? It's not even fathomable.
No, and you know, the sad thing about it is that all the radicals live in these big cities with tall towers, and they can't see more than a couple 100 feet. They have no idea what the rest of the United States is like.
No, I know it. I am really, really... I'm going to make and compile a list of all the things that have to be transitioned and changed and reformulated with the idiocy of green energy. The idiocy, and then I, of course, put in the same parentheses Idaho Power right next to that. And I don't think anybody realizes really how much has to change from agriculture all the way to the military. It's going to be enormous, and it won't work.
No, and to take the millions of cars on the highway today, what are you going to do with them? It's going to take a lot of energy to destroy them.
Well, yeah, not only that, but what about families that are just barely getting by? They have to scratch an itch to come up with a couple of dollars extra to buy their kids' shoes, and then all of a sudden you're going to tell them, well, you can't have a private car anymore. We don't want you driving, and that car of yours burns fossil fuels, and oh, yeah, you live out in the rural area, and so you're either going to have to forget about your property and move to a commune in the town and ride a bus because you're done, baby. You can't do things the way you used to. That is absolutely nothing more than a socialist/communist country that's taking complete control over everyone's freedoms.
I agree. You know, it's not going to happen in our lifetime, but it's our kids and grandkids that's going to be have to face that reality.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, we got to start fighting now, George.
Yeah, and not to change subjects here for a second, Zeb, but that Kobe getting killed and them, that's just tragic. But we also lost 2 soldiers in Afghanistan in the helicopter crash.
Yep, absolutely we did.
You don't see that. You don't see that nowhere.
You know, it's a shame to say this, but I think you of all would understand this, that we have been over there for so long, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, etc., the Middle East in general. And I hate to say this, but it's always been, in the last couple of years, old news, and it doesn't get the treatment that it should. No, we lost a soldier this weekend, 2 in a rollover over here that killed him, but nobody talks about that. They leave behind the families, too. Yeah, absolutely. George, I'm so glad you called, and thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Have a good day.
I will. Thank you very much. A good friend of mine right there. They don't come any better than George. Hey, by the way, I want to remind you about Barry Equipment and Rental, Sales, Service, and Parts. Three locations, and they've all got brand new inventories. Oh, yeah, 159 West Highway 30 in Burley, 465 Addison Avenue West in Twin, and the Nampa location for all the, bit my tongue, all the Bobcats. Oh, they've got all the Bobcat equipment. They've got all the Doosan wheel loaders and excavators for whatever you need to lift, dig, push, carry, level, whatever. They've got all the machinery, I'll guarantee you. Stop in. Call them, whatever. They're really nice people to work with. Barry Equipment and Rental in Burley, Twin Falls, and Nampa. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. This is something that I'm a little concerned about, and you should be too, because unfortunately it's hitting the elderly and those of us that are getting a little long in the tooth and gray on top. This coronavirus is, in many cases, over in China, not being reported for its full seriousness. There have been certain health agencies that have recorded and reported that there are thousands upon thousands more coming down with this virus, the coronavirus. And now this morning, just earlier at about 4:30 this morning, I heard a story by a doctor on Fox News that was stating that they have found 5 confirmed cases, and by this time there might even be more here in the United States, in Washington State, California, and Arizona. And so they're really telling everybody, be careful, and coughing, sneezing, it starts as like a common cold and then gets really dangerous and deadly. Caller, good morning, you're on the air.
Yes, Zeb. The root of all our problems, a lot of our problems, is the people who are teaching our children in our schools today. We've got a lot of people there that are teaching them socialism, communism, green this and green that. That's where a lot of our problems are coming from, is the education system. And until we can change that, it's going to be a tough field.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree. I am adamant that we need to have more input as to what's being taught, how it's being taught, and what the final net result is being in the classroom. We need to really know what's going on. It's going to take parents going to the PTA meetings. It's going to take a lot of people questioning about the validity of the textbooks that are being used. I mean, I could not agree with you more.
Well, unless that happens, unless people, even at the churches, that stuff should be preaching on Sundays about the education system. And if this goes on long enough, there's not going to be enough people like you and I around in the older generation to put a stop to the onslaught.
I couldn't agree with you again more, especially when you mentioned the clergy, because they have dropped the ball. They shouldn't even be wearing a uniform. They've dropped the ball in general. Not all ministers by any means, or clergy, but most all have dropped the ball in really doing their job about a continued community awareness of what's going on in the world today.
Well, they have President Trump on their side. They don't have to worry about the IRS taking their tax exemptions away from them. Not with the President Trump in office.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've got a whole bunch of cleaning up to do, Tony, and I just hope it's not too late. We have let this left garbage come into our schools, into our lives, into our churches, etc., and we've got to clean house.
Well, there's been a lot of changes in my life. When I was younger, we had discipline.
Oh, yes.
Not today.
You know, it was discipline that we remembered and discipline now that we appreciate.
Yep, absolutely.
God bless you, Tony. Thank you. Thank you very much for your call. Appreciate that. Calls welcome. 436, you bet, 2244, 1-866-927-4587. Did you hear about the dad that confronted Elizabeth Warren over college costs and student loan forgiveness? It was great. It was poignant. It was absolutely spot on. She was speaking at earlier this last week, and after it was over, a father walked up to Elizabeth Warren and basically chastised her over her plan to forgive a total of $640 billion of student loan debts. Now, this is something you can't make up. They caught it on video. And the father said to her, "My daughter is in school. I saved all my money. Am I going to get my money back?" Elizabeth Warren replied, "Of course not." And the father said, "So you're going to pay for people who didn't save any money, but those of us who did the right thing, we get gypped." And that's exactly what happened. He mentioned that he had to work a double shift to pay for his daughter's education and accused Elizabeth Warren of mocking his life story. And he told her, he says, "You're laughing at me." And Warren denied that she was laughing, but the dad was not buying her explanation. And he said, "That's exactly what you're doing. We did the right thing, and we get gypped." $640 billion of forgiveness. I draw the line as a person that's a taxpayer. It is not my responsibility or yours as a taxpayer to pay for little Johnny and Susie's college educations, for your neighbors down the street or people you don't even know, Chicago, New York, Jacksonville, Florida, or Tucumcari, New Mexico. If they want to go to school and they want to be a lawyer, if they want to go to school and learn how to be a dentist, if they want to go to school and be anything, it's not my obligation to pay their debts. No. And to forgive their debts, after you and I, and there's a lot of you out in the audience that can relate to this, like myself, I had to work nights until about 11 o'clock and then take a long bus ride back to my college dorm and then get up at 6 in the morning and then do the classes and then go back to work that afternoon. Nobody forgave my debt. The people I owed money to, they were standing there with their hands out and they got their money. But I am so fed up with this liberal sleaze, this liberal crud of saying that, oh, we got to forgive these kids their college debt. Bunk. Another word I wanted to use, but I can't. I am absolutely against forgiving people on college loans. Don't give me this sad story like, oh, well, they get out of school and it's so expensive. Fine, figure out a way to pay for it before you sign on the dotted line to go to that school. Don't hang it on me or you or anyone. Taxpayers should not foot the bill. Calls are welcome. I'm going to do a weather forecast, and then we'll take some of your calls. I want to remind you about our friends at Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. Do you hear a little ringing in your ear or jingle bells or something? I'm not being funny either. Ringing in your ears is a concern for many people, and you better check it out. It might be tinnitus. And at Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids, they can diagnose and treat that. So please get a hold of them today. These are wonderful, wonderful people right behind the Minidoka Hospital across from the emergency room, and that's Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. Number to call, 312-0957. Right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Looks like increasing clouds for today and a slight chance of rain or snow for tomorrow. Here's a look at your weather forecast. We are looking at partly to mostly cloudy skies for today. Winds out of the west at about 14 miles an hour. Gusts as high as 25 miles an hour. Looking at a high of 43 for tonight. Mostly cloudy skies with a low of 32 as we round the corner for tomorrow. Chance of rain and snow showers in the afternoon. Mostly cloudy skies. We are expecting a high of 43. New snow accumulations of less than a half an inch possible. For tomorrow night, chance of rain and or snow showers, mostly cloudy skies, low of 32. By Wednesday, partly sunny, 40. And then by Thursday, mostly cloudy, 42. That's a look at your weather forecast for Zeb at the Ranch.
Thank you, Gina. Appreciate it. And Mount Harrison Audiology waiting to serve you. Call today for a hearing screening appointment. The number 312-0957. Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. You know, I just honestly don't comprehend. And please, somebody help me on this. Somebody out there call me, please, and tell me, how can you comprehend a giveaway, free attitude, whether it's Medicare for all, health care for all, whether it's eliminating all the $640 billion with a B dollars in debt forgiveness to college students? How can you keep on doing this? How can you even advocate this? Because all it is just a false front building, because the money has got to come from somewhere, and the money's going to come from the ultra-rich and the higher class and right on down the chain, right on down the ladder to the middle class, etc. Everybody's going to pay. And I am sick and tired of thinking and feeling that we have to pay somebody else's bills. We have too many leeches. I'll underline that word, leeches, in our society today. Oh, gimme. I can't pay for it, so you pay for it. And that's the philosophy of the Democrats. I don't care if it's energy. I don't care what it is. These people on the left are hell-bent to destroy the fabric and the moral values and all the aesthetic values in this country. They want to tear everything apart and just rebuild it to formulate for their own selves, and that formulation for themselves is control. Certainly you can see this. I mean, when I listen to all this, well, these poor college students, I don't feel that way at all. Most of the problems are that they should have realized, gee, that's a very expensive school. Maybe I can't afford to go to Harvard. Maybe I can't afford to go to the University of Southern California. Maybe I can't go to UCLA. Maybe I can't go to Yale. But I can get a college education, a lot less money, at maybe a lower college or university that's not as high priced, or maybe even forego college and go to a trade school and do something that you like to do, and you can learn your living from the get-go. But this saying that we have to pay for these students' debts, no. What do you think about that? Give me a call, 436-2244. Another area that I feel a lot of criticism is necessary on this issue is the so-called guidance counselors at high schools that I don't think are doing their job in general, and also parents. Little Johnny and Susie, I want to go to USC. I want to go to Harvard. Whoa. And how is that going to be paid for? You're going to take out student loans that are going to amount to thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars, and mom and dad can't afford it, but then you go to school and major in basket weaving, and then you want the taxpayer to pick it up. No way. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. One of the most interesting things that I have seen took place this morning, and I was watching a newscast in regards to the formulation, organization of the security forces for the Super Bowl that's coming up this next Sunday. It literally, it literally blew my mind because of where the Super Bowl is going to be held this year in Miami, Florida. The dangers that were presented for naval and marine terrorism, or in-air terrorism, or on-land terrorism, and the groups and the amount of people and the studies and the mapping out as to how much manpower and how much equipment here, there, everywhere, and the practice sessions. It blew my mind due to the fact that Miami's on the coast, due to the fact that the ocean's all around. They really have to train special groups to make sure that the people and everything that's going on with the Super Bowl is protected. It's not just a ticket to Miami, get off the plane and enjoy the Super Bowl, because there are so many factions that are involved in protecting you and your family. Wow. It just blew me away. And I'll bet you any money, that there's a lot of things naturally that were not covered or given or seen or talked about on this newscast, because there's a lot of things they probably don't want people to know that they are doing to make sure that there's safety and sanity during this big event, the Super Bowl for this year. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I want to remind everybody out there about our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Oh, boy, 7 locations, and these people are on high alert. Boy, they've got all their service trucks ready to go all over the valley. I mean, like if there's a dairyman that calls and says, holy smokes, my loader's broke down, bad tires, boy, the service trucks are there to serve you. I mean, they serve all the dairies, their farms, the ranches, and they've got all your tires, whether it's for your pickups, SUVs, or trailers, or your farm equipment. Don't hesitate. Get a hold of them today, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Believe me, they are there to serve you. Also, with the best in brake service, front end alignment, shocks and struts and batteries. Lane and Rupert, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike and Jerome, the Twist family in Paul, Daniel on Poline in Twin Falls, and Trent on Overland in Burley. The best, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All righty. What have we got for the rest of the morning? I'll kind of give you a highlight. Rick Manning. I just absolutely think the world of Rick. He's going to come on the program and tell us about what is really going on. He can discern everything that's happening at this impeachment fiasco. And he's going to talk to us at 9:06. And then Frosty Woldridge is going to be on the program at 9:30. And I'm really looking forward to Frosty because I want to have him reiterate again the cost factors to you and I, the taxpayers, for all these millions of refugees and illegal aliens coming in. And at 10:06, we're going to have retired United States Army Lieutenant Colonel Sargis Sangari talking about the Iranian situation. He was born in Iran, knows the people and the climate as to what's going on over there in Iran, and he's going to bring us a complete update on that. And then at 10:30 this morning, Idaho Legislative Update, sponsored by Handy Truck Lines, and our dear friend Senator Kelly Anthon will be on the program, and he's got plenty of topics to talk about from the legislative session for this year. So we've got a whole bunch of things going on for the rest of the morning. Quick note that the 6th Annual Soil Health Workshop is going to take place Thursday, February 6th at the Best Western Burley Inn and Convention Center. Don't miss that. It's going to be a lot of interest to a lot of people, and you need to RSVP. Contact 572-3369 or 436-4202. There you go. Soil Health Workshop on February 6th. Right now, we're going to turn it over to Wheels, and he's going to take us up to news time. We'll be back in about 7 minutes. Oh, good morning. Good morning. I see blue sky out there. Going to be a great Monday. Good morning, Zeb at the Ranch, of course, with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. They handle all your tires, from the farm, the dairy, right to the folks living in the town. They've got all the tires for your safe driving. And don't forget, too, our friends at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. And Greystone Crossing Senior Living at 1221 21st Street in Hayburn. Seniors living the good life with friends. Right now, this good word for Western Waste.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're all at your disposal. Western Waste Services, we care about our community, our resources, and this free land. Western Waste Services is lending a hand, always at your disposal. Western Waste Services.
I want to remind you again about the Power in Pink program, Trash Cancer, with our dear friends, Western Waste Services, always at your disposal. Number to call and get your pink garbage cans, your pink garbage carts, and replace the gray ones with the pink, and they're helping fight cancer. Please call them today and find out more. 734-6969, Western Waste Services. Really, really good folks. Want to also give a great big shout out to our friends over at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation, and also Elite Fitness. Yes, sirree. Both of those great businesses are serving you and your health. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, with Nick Greenwell and his entire staff, helping you get back to being you. If you're aching and paining and moaning and groaning for you're recouping from a surgery or an accident, whatever, please get a hold of them today. They know all the exercises, and they've got that hydrotherapy pool, the only one of its kind in all of southern Idaho. So please call them at 678-1191. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation. Yep, getting you back to being you. Let's go to the phone line right now, and I want to just say this, because of all the balderdash that's going on in Washington, D.C. right now with the impeachment hearings. Let's hear it from somebody that absolutely can break it down, tell us the truth, and that, of course, is the president of Americans for Limited Government and co-author of the book Necessary Noise with Star Parker. Woo! Good morning, Rick Manning. How are you?
Hey, Zeb. Missed you last week, but, nothing's going on in D.C., so, it's just a real quiet time.
Rick, I got to apologize to you, and I should have called you after the fact. I ended up in the hospital, and so I apologize if I caused you any problem.
No. There was no problem. It's just, I just wanted to acknowledge that we weren't able to meet up last week, and I hope everything's okay.
Getting better, finally, and I appreciate your concern. Rick, there's nobody on my program that I trust more for a valued opinion and judgment of what's going on with this so-called impeachment trial. Can you please bring us up to speed as to what you think is happening, what has happened, and where we're headed?
Well, what's happened is the Adam Schiff and the House Democrats spent 24 hours making a case, all based on circumstantial and guesswork, with no actual information, and they can't get around a simple fact. And the simple fact is, first of all, I would argue that that foreign aid should always be tied to pursuing U.S. interests, but if the allegation of all of the stuff they brought up is contradicted by two facts. Number one, Ukrainians never knew that the aid was being withheld until very late, August 29th. So you have a circumstance where their case is that the Ukrainians are being leveraged to engage in a corruption investigation against Joe Biden in exchange for the money that had been promised to them. Well, we know for a fact that in order to leverage somebody, they have to know they're being leveraged. The Ukrainians say they weren't leveraged and didn't even know about it. There's the only person who said they might have been leveraged was a guy named Ambassador Sondland, who presumed that was the case. When he called the president, asked him, the president said, no, I don't want anything in exchange. And he testified to that effect. The second person who called the president was Senator Ron Johnson, who called him prior to a meeting between the Ukrainians and Vice President Pence on September, I guess it was August 31st he called him. And the meeting was on September 1. He says, what do we want to exchange for the aid? And the president said nothing. Right? He said, who told you that? And that's not the case. So the two people who actually asked the president about whether there was a quid pro quo, the president told them both no. Everybody else, all the witnesses the House pulled up, those witnesses all were referring to what they'd heard because of Sondland's assumption, his presumption that there was quid pro quo. And the House managers never bothered to show that to the senators. In 24 hours, they talked about Sondland a lot, but they never once showed him saying, no, I never talked to the president about it. And when I did, he said, no, there was no quid pro quo. He didn't want anything in exchange. So it is the House doesn't have a case. Mm-hmm. That's the bottom line. And the impeachment acquittal should occur. And the natural thing to say, well, what about the John Bolton supposed testimony or book or whatever?
Right, yeah.
So that's the natural thing to ask about. So I'll just deal with it very quickly. The facts don't change. If the president was frustrated, and I don't know what's in the book, and quite honestly, the New York Times will only give you what they want you to read. So I trust them not one. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. But here's the deal. The facts remain. The money was released 3 weeks earlier than it needed to be. The Ukrainians were never leveraged. Never were asked. Never were told we're holding your aid unless you investigate Biden. They were never told that. So given that, there was, no matter what the frustrations might have been in the White House about the fact Hillary Clinton gets away with, gets away with everything, that Joe Biden's one of the most corrupt people that we've ever seen, who yet he has a stellar reputation, but his kids somehow all walk away with kids and brothers all walk away with massive amounts of money in the wake of his visits to various foreign countries. It's apart from all that, yeah, the president might have been frustrated and complained about it. Doesn't mean that anything was done to actually leverage the Ukrainian government. In fact, it wasn't. And John Bolton would have no capacity to say anything different. Because if he had, it would have come out from others that those things had transpired. So so in essence, the Bolton thing is much ado about nothing, and the facts remain, and the president should be acquitted. And if he's not acquitted, Zeb, if they decide to get witnesses, they have to do this fairly. And if they're going to do it fairly, they have to let the president call the witnesses he wants to call. And that means Hunter Biden, Joe Biden. It means Adam Schiff and some of Schiff's staff. It means the whistleblower, the so-called whistleblower. It means a woman named Alexandra Chalupa, who was raising money for Hillary Clinton in Ukraine for the 2016 campaign. It was organizing Ukrainian operations against Trump that were being funded by the Ukraine. So it means bringing the prosecutors, multiple prosecutors from Ukraine who were investigating the Burisma Hunter Biden connection, including the one that Joe Biden got fired. And it means opening up the entirety of this case and essentially spending months going through the sewer that is Washington, D.C., and dragging this nation through a really, really, really hard time, because it's going to get super ugly. And I just have to say, as somebody who sits here, if the other side wants to have a real fight, then the Senate has to allow there to be a real fight. They don't get to fight where they get to fire shots and the other side doesn't get to fire back, because they will rue the day when they open the door of having witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Because this president, and this is my last little thought, it drives me nuts. This president has spent 3 years being investigated. He's had the impeachment. They had 90 days, but they were operating on the impeachment. Most of it was spent behind closed doors in a basement, a secret testimony, some of which hasn't been released to the public because it's exculpatory for the president. And and the president, and they're saying, gee, we haven't had enough witnesses. And the president hasn't been able to call a single witness yet.
Yeah.
Well, if the other side, if the House wants to call witnesses, and the Senate allows them to, they better allow this president to call every single witness he wants to call. And because he's the one who's the defendant here. The burden of proof is on the other side. He's got a right to defend himself. And the other side spent 3 years trying to convict this president of an impeachable offense. And now this president has a chance to fight back, and they better let him fight back if they have any sense of fairness, because this president's been treated completely unfairly through the process. And if the Senate continues that if they allow witnesses, they darn well better allow every single witness the president wants to call, because that is called, if you really want to have fairness, that's called fairness.
Absolutely. Rick, I don't have the expertise on these legal hang-ups or matters that you do, but let me ask you a question here. If John Bolton is forced, coerced, or wants to testify on behalf of the Democrats at this Senate hearing, how can he? And the reason I say simply how can he, because the information and the conversations between the president and Bolton as security advisor at that time, how can he release information that might be very sensitive about security matters for our military in the world? How can he?
Well, he would contend that that anything he talked about be non-classified. But the danger of a Bolton testifying and the breaking of executive privilege is very simple. If the President of the United States can't have conversations with his closest advisors and express frustrations and everything else to his closest advisors, then in fact the President becomes completely and totally isolated. And you have the worst case scenario where a President can't ask questions, can't sit there and say, what about this? Can we use military force? Can we go into, what are our options in terms of hurting an enemy? What should we use, economic, or should we use military aid? Can't ask those questions anymore, because if you ask those questions, suddenly those questions, any conversation, any determination, any kind of trying to figure out the right answer, suddenly becomes available to general public dissemination. Similarly, the conversations that are held, because you can argue the conversations held with a foreign leader are subject to being leaked, and subject to because they have been leaked by the National Security Council, and are subject to examination, which means the president and foreign leaders can't talk. Well, you want a dangerous situation in this world, have the United States president be completely isolated from alternative points of view, not being able to ask questions, get the best advice from a wide variety of people, and talk to foreign leaders without having it all being in the public scrutiny. You put that situation is a recipe for international disaster. And that's the situation that the Democrats are setting up.
Absolutely. Let me shift gears, and I use the word shift to go to Adam Schiff. How can, and I'm going to put this in the form of a question that I've wondered about since this started in the Senate. How can Adam Schiff get up at the podium and use parodies and lies and misleading statements that would impinge on the honesty of this trial, and Judge Roberts from the Supreme Court sits there and does not break in and say that's not factual at all? It almost seems like a kangaroo court because nobody's correcting Adam Schiff. What are your thoughts?
Well, the view of this trial is that the House gets to make their case, and then the President gets to make his case. The House had 24 hours to make their case, 24 hours total time over 3 days, and had about 20 minutes of material that they had to stretch out to 24 hours, which is why you got the repetitive every hour repetition of key facts they wanted, or key points they wanted the people to hear. I would recommend anybody listen to the 2 hours or watch the 2 hours of the president's initial defense sort of executive summary. I would encourage anybody to watch that 2 hours because it dismantles everything that Schiff said. And that's the point of adversarial conversations. It's what was missing in the House. There was no adversarial witnesses. There were no counterfactuals. Republicans could ask questions of Schiff's witnesses, which they did effectively, but they couldn't bring their own witnesses to contradict what Schiff was contending. So that was Roberts says, hey, each side gets to present their case. It's up to the president's team to disabuse the Senate of the validity of the House case. And quite honestly, in those 2 hours, that was accomplished. There can be no doubt the most brilliant thing, and I was questioning it when it first happened, but the most brilliant thing they did is Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, read the actual president's statement, his actual transcript of his call with President Zelensky. And then he played Adam Schiff's made-up statement that Adam Schiff led with for his opening of the inquiry, and he let those two sit right next to each other in the minds of the Senate, so they knew that Adam Schiff was trying to impeach the president based on the conversation that Adam Schiff imagined this president had versus the actual conversation that this president had. And I think that was perhaps the most damaging part of the entirety because it set it up to show, they spent a lot of time talking about Ambassador Sondland, who was the guy who presumed that there was some quid pro quo. Well, he sits there, and Adam Schiff played his video all the time talking about the quid pro quo. He never played the part for the Senate about when he said he presumed it. And so the president put together a montage of him saying, yeah, I presumed it, I assumed it, words to that effect, and essentially eviscerated about two-thirds of their testimony that the Senate or the House was presenting. And they just did that time after time, showing where the actual witnesses for the prosecution, for the House, contradicted the assertions in the House upon cross-examination. And because the House managers didn't present the full story, the White House did, and they effectively left the senators with going home for late Saturday afternoon and Sunday with the full knowledge that the House case is completely made up, completely an imagining of Adam Schiff. And that does much more damage to Adam Schiff than Roberts shutting him down, because it destroys his credibility in the minds of his colleagues.
Boy, you've really laid it out in a fashion that I think all of my listeners and myself included can really follow this. One final thought here. I see and hear, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, a complete transition in thinking of our judicial system during the House hearing and now the Senate trial by the Democrats trying to change the idea and concept of you are innocent until proven guilty. I keep hearing, of course, Pelosi and Adam Schiff and Chuck Schumer always saying at news and press conferences, well, the president should do this to prove his innocence. Since when in this country, except for Donald Trump, our president, have we had to prove our innocence? We're proven innocent until proven guilty.
I believe what happened on Saturday is effectively the president was exonerated entirely. Okay, and so this is the destruction of the House case. Any reasonable person looking at it would say the president was, based on what the House presented, the president did nothing wrong. And this whole thing has been nothing more than a witch hunt, continuation of the 3-year witch hunt. But having said that, impeachments are different, okay? And the burden of proof should be even higher for an impeachment than for a conviction of reasonable doubt. You have to, if you're going to say somebody committed treason or bribery or high crime and misdemeanors, you better have locked down absolute 100% proof that it occurred. And they have nothing except for their own imaginings. And so they are trying to shift the entire burden of proof, and it's the thing I will tell you is that the only thing they say that drives me nuts is when they say no one's above the law, because their whole case is Biden's above the law. Okay, the whole case is the U.S. government cannot evaluate whether Joe Biden engaged in corrupt activities in Ukraine while Vice President of the United States because he's a candidate for president in 2020. That is their entirety of their argument. And yet, they choose to try to convict this president and throw him out of office and not allow him to be on the ballot in 2020 based upon, at best, circumstantial and hearsay evidence that no court in the world would accept. So that's it's astonishing to me. It's the one thing the only thing I want to punch the wall when they talk is when they say no one's above the law, because each one of us knows Hillary's above the law.
Mm-hmm.
She's above the law. Joe Biden apparently is above the law. Bill Clinton's above the law. I can name a dozen Democrat politicians who are above the law. But apparently, if you happen to have an R behind your name, you're not only above the law, you're below the law.
You're right.
It's no man is above the law. Well, this man has been treated worse than any defendant in history. And that tells me that there is this two-sided justice is now flipped on its head, where it's not only no justice, some people being relieved of any duty to have even a shred of honesty, as in Hillary Clinton. But if you actually happen to win and beat them, at that point they change the entirety of the rules to make it so you're going to be subjected to inquiry after inquiry after inquiry until they find something you did wrong, and then they're going to try to impeach you on it. And even if they don't find something, if they think that you did something wrong, they're going to impeach you on it. So they've changed the standards entirely in politics, and I don't know the country. I don't know how we come back from this, because I'm the most law-abiding person in the world, and it makes me so angry that there's dual justice. If we don't fix it, if we don't start seeing some of the people involved in all the shenanigans in the Obama administration, all the deep state attacks on the political system, if we don't start seeing some of those people being perp-walked, I like a lot of people, are going to come to the conclusion that this is that this system is rigged, and that's scary, because we have to believe the system's fair and straight up in order for it to survive.
Absolutely.
And when we get the clue that it's not, it becomes very difficult for our system of justice to survive.
Rick, you are the best at what you do, and I appreciate it. The president of Americans for Limited Government, Rick Manning, God bless you for that great, great half hour of information. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Ed. Take care.
All right, sir. Wow, he laid it out so that anybody and everybody can really follow what's happening or not happening with the Democrats and their impeachment of our president. And he just knows because he's right back there in the thick of things. And we thank Rick Manning for being on our program. Want to remind you, too, about our friends over at Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert with Joel Heward, his family, and his staff serving you and your family during a very critical time when there's the passing of a loved one. They always provide the families they serve with the best possible support and comfort. And again, remember this, always upholding the highest ethical standards with unquestioned integrity. Don't forget that they also can help you with the memorial headstones and just any and all questions that you have. Please give them a call at Hanson Mortuary, 436-5636. That number again, 436-5636. And Joel Heward also serving you and your family at Morrison Payne Funeral Home on East Main in Burley. Real quick note, if you want to get outside and enjoy the snow, why not get a snow machine or a snow bike? And if you haven't done so, get over to Let's Ride at 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World. Man, this is where you can go into that showroom and you're going to wonder, first of all, how they got everything in there. All the snowmobiles, all the snow bikes, all the accessories. Wow. This is quite a business. Let's Ride, 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World, open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, Saturdays, 9 to 4. And remember, they've got a super service department to keep you running at Let's Ride, where the fun is sold. Absolutely. Right now, let's go to the phone line, and I really, really am looking forward to our conversation with my dear friend from Golden, Colorado, and that's Frosty Woldridge. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Yes, and good morning to you, Zeb, and it's a pleasure. I've missed you last week, but I'm looking forward to being back in the saddle with you here in the coming weeks.
Well, I owe you an apology because early that morning I was taken to the hospital, and so I apologize for not notifying you. It's my fault entirely.
I would say if you're going off to the hospital, everything else can wait by the wayside, and not a problem whatsoever. I'm glad you're healthy back in the saddle, and things are good.
You know, Frosty, on Wednesday of this week, I have a former newspaper editor, and he's a very, very conservative Republican, has served our state as a representative, etc. I've got Steve Hartkin coming on the program. And Steve, like myself and you, Steve has written many, many stories about refugees and illegal aliens and why we're allowing them to come in and basically take over our country and our money situation in this country as far as basically paying their way. How bad is the situation today? I mean, people are saying, oh, well, we've got to help all these refugees to the numbers of millions. Oh, well, these illegal aliens are coming in. They're looking for a better life. I don't know, Frosty, how many more numbers we can absorb. You're the man with the numbers. Tell me.
I certainly am the man with the numbers because every one of you listening to this program, and certainly when I get on other national programs, in fact, I actually got on a liberal show, the Don Jeffries show out of New York 2 weeks ago, and he said they had never had such a response to one interviewee, yours truly, as they had to mine. And he said it was absolutely. He says his phone lines were lit up. He said his email got flooded, and they said, "Please bring this guy back because he's really bringing the facts to us like nobody you've ever had on before." And one of the things is that your audience, and again, my fellow Americans, and I don't care if you're from the middle of Idaho or the middle of Golden, Colorado. We're all Americans. But there's no question, and I know many of you have read most of my stuff on newswithviews.com. My latest one is Let's Impeach the Entire U.S. House of Representatives. And I pick out the leaders, and I say, what have they done and I marked down 10 things that the U.S. House of Representatives have not done in the last 20 years. They've funded two 19-year wars. It cost us $6 trillion, and nobody's questioning that. Has that served the American people? Has it made our country better? No, it's just drained us of $6 trillion and over 6,500 of our finest in the Army and the Marine Corps. It's caused 22 suicides a day of veterans from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and also on-duty military, 22 a day. I mean, we're talking thousands of deaths because of those wars just from suicides alone. The fact that we're allowing the borders, and this is the House of Representatives, they're the ones that allowed the borders to be completely open. In fact, people like Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, Charles Schumer, these characters are out there inviting all of this illegality and not enforcing our laws. And so, again, as I've said, and I can't say it enough, the third world and all those refugees are a never-ending line. And I'm going to show it in my forthcoming book, America's Overpopulation Predicament, Blindsiding Future Generations. No one really understands in this country, and the mainstream media will not tell you what I'm telling you. And I'm a ground-level American boy. That's what I am. I mean, I'm truck driver, teacher, heavy equipment operator, you name it. I've done it. I've been there. I've roofed houses. I mean, you can't get any more American than I am. And yet our leaders are not serving us, and you'll see it in my latest piece about literally we need to impeach most of the U.S. House of Representatives because they are failing us. They are not following their oath of office. And the one thing about these refugees, the United Nations did a study and said that in excess of 170 million people would transfer into America if given a plane ticket and a visa right now. And as it is, we're taking in, last year, the United States grew by over 4 million people. And that most of that was, virtually three-quarters of that was foreigners coming into our country either legally or illegally, and their birth rates. And again, make this clear to everyone you speak to. Third world people are adding 83 million of themselves net gain every year around the world, even though their countries are starving, like Ethiopia, like Kenya, like Sudan, like Congo, like Indonesia, like China, like India. And if we keep taking them in, we're simply going to turn out just like everything they fled. Overpopulated, unsustainable countries where people are illiterate, they're on welfare, and at some point, it's going to collapse our entire welfare system. And for any of you who read my latest column a week ago called Blip, B-L-I-P, by Chris Clugston, I sent you the article that I wrote as a review on the book, but we are running out of the resources because we are simply overpopulating America at such a rate of speed that we're running out of copper and metal and lead and zinc and cadmium, and the list goes on, bauxite. Everything that makes our country operate, and Canada and Europe and all these first world countries, we are now at exhaustion level. There's 87 minerals and metals that are being used to literally make our country operate, this society operate at this level of technology. And once those non-renewable resources are exhausted, we're simply going to collapse these systems because we cannot continue to operate them because we won't have those minerals and metals to do that. So we're in serious, serious trouble. And so the 1980, it's called the Refugee Resettlement Act, and I think it was called, it was 92-212 of 1980. That needs to be completely rescinded, just like the 1965 Immigration Reform Act, because the fact is we cannot and we will not survive endless immigration into there. No matter how big our hearts are, at some point our house will be overloaded and we will be unable to function as a thriving civilization, but in fact we will be turned into a third world, scraping by, and everybody's miserable civilization. That's in the cards for us if we don't stop the refugees from coming in, and if we don't stop all of these regular immigrants coming in legally or illegally. Because, again, Mexico, it's got 120 million people. They're going to have 140 million by mid-century. 140 million. They can't take care of 130 million right now. What are they going to do with 120 million? What are they going to do with another 20 million people? Well, they're going to come to El Norte, and that's, of course, United States of America. That's the kind of dilemma we're in, Zeb. I think I've really made it clear to most people with just my last little discussion.
There's no question. I mean, it was laid out absolutely in perfection. But, Frosty, when you talk and go to some place to deliver a speech, etc., or you talk to Democratic leadership, why do they not comprehend? Why do they not be able to grasp that the United States cannot be a sponge that's going to soak up everyone? Like you said, pretty soon the ship's going to sink. But why in the world do you feel that the left feels that we can be the be-all, the catch-all, and the pay-for-all in this country? It's not feasible, it's not practical, and yet our citizens are suffering.
Well, you know, I have actually, my wife has, since way back in her 20s, she has a girlfriend who was through a college and all that, and she's a liberal in Boston, Massachusetts, and she curses me because I married Sandy, and I have a completely foundational understanding of what's coming, and yet she has a mindset that we have to take in all the immigrants of the world to save them and give them a better life. That kind of mindset, it's called... in fact, the great Dr. Albert Bartlett, whom I was friends with for years, and he was brilliant on the population issue, he said they are innumerates, I-N-N-U-M-E-R-A-T-E-S, innumerates. They're mathematically illiterate, and their mindset will not let them grasp the realities of what we face. And so that, in other words, somebody that's an innumerate flunked 6th grade math. They don't, and they cannot compile the numbers. And it really gets down to numbers. And as you all know, I was a math and science teacher. And you can't lie, and you can't cheat, and you can't fool numbers. And the one thing about numbers is that they're not racist, they're not xenophobic, and they're certainly not nativist. They're simply numbers. And so that kind of a mindset is not in touch with the real world. And somebody like a Nancy Pelosi, do you think anybody thinks she knows what's going on down there in Los Angeles with 59,000 people homeless and living in tents, or in San Francisco 11,000? Well, guess what? I have gone to those places on a bicycle. I rode right through them. I know what's going on in Los Angeles right now. It's a living nightmare for 59,000 American citizens, and yet Nancy Pelosi wants to bring in more people from Mexico, more refugees from Ethiopia, Sudan, Somalia. Well, what she doesn't realize, because she doesn't have the brain power, or she doesn't have the awareness, or she doesn't have the mindset to open up to reality, she doesn't understand that places like Somalia is going to add another 30 million people within the next 30 years. You go look it up. Look at the UN population figures on Somalia, and I think it's 80-something million or whatever it is right now. They're going to be over 110 million by 2050, just 30 years from now. That's what we're facing. And that's why I've tried to get on 60 Minutes. I've tried to get on NPR. I've tried to get on Fox News with Tucker Carlson. I've tried to get on Anderson Cooper at CNN. These people need to share and give knowledge to the American people that we cannot win this. We are not going to save anybody, but in fact, we will destroy our country and our ability to function as a civilization. That's what's coming if we don't change course, Zeb.
Absolutely. We have a caller with a question or a comment. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air, please.
Yes, good morning, Frosty and Zeb. Wouldn't it be possible to place all these people coming in here on every bit of property that has Pelosi or Schumer or all the rest of these liberals that have? Maybe that would be the cure.
Frosty, respond to the caller, please.
Let that happen because they have gated houses. They live in gated communities. One of the things about these liberals, they are not reality-based. And I'll say that again. Every liberal listening to this show this morning, there's no way that you are liberal. You're liberalness, you're a Democrat, you're a socialist. You are not reality-based. You cannot refute anything I've just said on this program. You cannot refute any fact that I've given on the Zeb Bell Show for the last almost 20 years now, because I bring the facts. And I'm going to say this again. Facts are not racist. They are not xenophobic. They're not nativist. They're simply facts. And the numbers are the facts I go by, and we cannot continue to support this. And so people that have that unbelievably unrealistic mindset simply have to get real, have to get a clear understanding of what they are literally putting onto their children. And that is an unsustainable civilization that will collapse at some point in time if we don't change course and move toward a sustainable population, which we chose. Back in 1970, the average black, white, brown, red American female has been averaging only 2 children since 1970. So we're not the ones causing this explosion of population. It's the U.S. Congress with the refugee settlement and with the illegal immigration that they let happen, and also the 1965 Immigration Reform Act. We cannot continue on this path, or we will not survive to 2050. We will not make it, and that's guaranteed by the book, Blip, B-L-I-P, by Chris Clarkson. Get it, read it, and weep. He says there's no way that we are going to escape what's coming if we don't change course now.
You know, Frosty, appreciate your answering that caller, but I've got one last question I want to talk to you about. You know, ever since you have been on the program with me, we have been called names, we have been called bigots and hate mongers, we've been called everything all through the Obama years up to the present. And why is it that the liberal left can get away with these falsified statements and documents and what really is happening and make the rest of us look like we're hate mongers against people? I'm not. You and I both know that you do a lot of work for the community. I do a lot of work for the community, but yet we're seeing our communities, if you will, being diminished because of all the refugees, illegal aliens, etc., coming into our country, changing the dynamics and changing the culture forever. I feel that the general public has got to stand up with a loud, unified voice and say enough, but they won't do it.
Well, at some point they will do it. Actually, I think you all know, or many of you have read Malcolm Gladwell, and he's an African-American, biracial kind of guy. I have tremendous respect for him. And what he wrote was Tipping Point. And Tipping Point, pardon me, is a book where there's enough people that get educated. I know, Zeb, your integrity. I know your integrity to the core, because if you didn't have the integrity that you own, you live, and you express, then I wouldn't be on this show with you. I only go with integrity. And so all of those liberals and all of those ones that call out the hate monger and all the other names, they simply, literally, they know the facts, or they literally deny the facts, and the only thing they can do is sling names. And I think, I'm not sure if it was Socrates, but he said something, when somebody doesn't have the facts, the only thing they can use is name-calling. It was some great philosopher. And that's what's going on with liberals. They cannot refute any fact that you and I are talking about, certainly none of the facts. William Geen, Roy Beck, Dan Stein from fairus.org. I mean, we can go down the line. All of these men and all the women, Madeline Weld that I work with, Kathleen Parker, she gets called all sorts of names. She just got lacerated in the Boulder camera just last week by the Sierra Club, which, again, the Sierra Club is just as false as the rest of them, because the Sierra Club got bought off for millions and millions of dollars, not to make any connection to the immigration explosion in our country and to the degradation of our environment. And so they literally do everything they can to make sure no one speaks about immigration, and yet they want your money, and they want to say, we're really going to save America's environment, but in fact they are part and parcel of being in denial and squashing the immigration invasion discussion. And so, again, money and people like Schumer or Pelosi or Feinstein or any of these senators and House members, they're not getting touched by this. At some point, though, just like what's going on in Europe right now, and I get the reports. I mean, the Muslims are stabbing people. They're raping women. A woman can't go out into public anymore in Paris, France. She'll get robbed. She'll get raped. She'll be accosted by all of these people from Africa and the Middle East. Those are the facts. How do you call that a hate monger situation? The fact is, you can't. I mean, are we calling the person who ran down 9 people in New York City that Muslim? What is he? What is he exactly? What happens about Fort Hood? What about the Fort Dick 6? What about all of the Muslims that are doing the female genital mutilation? Are they hate mongers? What about the honor killings now averaging 25 a year in our country from Muslim immigrants? Do we want more of that? What happens when those honor killings get up to 100 a year and then 1,000 a year, and in fact 20,000 a year, which is the honor killing number on average according to the United Nations in Muslim countries? Do we want that in our country? And what are we going to call them? Hate mongers or rapists or honor-killing barbarians? I mean, at some point you better start calling them names too. What do you want to call them? I call it we're being disenfranchised from our own culture. We're being disenfranchised and displaced from our own language and our own way of life. And it's being brought to us, again, by the U.S. Congress that won't change course when the facts are so clear that we can't continue on this path right now.
Absolutely. Caller, I've got just exactly a minute. Caller, I'm only going to give you 20 seconds. Real fast, go.
Yeah, this Cowboy Mike, I want to thank you and Frosty. I got some statistics given to me by a little buddy of mine. 194 mass shootings last year. 10,150 Americans were murdered by illegals last year. Now, everybody was hollering about the shooting, but nobody's saying anything about the murders of the illegals that's been doing to the Americans. Maybe Frosty has some statistics on that and how accurate that may be.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your call. Frosty, did you hear it? It was a little wavy coming in. Could you understand the question?
Yeah, I could. And, I've written about the number of Americans who are killed by illegal aliens. And, of course, that is squashed by the mainstream press. Next week, I'll tell you what, I'll do a lot of research this coming week, and let's really jump into the fact that Americans are being raped, being murdered, the burglaries, and all the facts of what illegal aliens are doing. And some of them, again, like the Steinle girl there in San Francisco,
yes,
murdered by an illegal alien.
Yes.
And that kind of a mindset, let that murderer get off. He actually got off from that murder.
Yep.
And so that's the kind of mindset. Do we want that kind of mindset where we allow an illegal alien who murdered an American girl right there in San Francisco? He got off. I'll do the research on that this week. We can go after it and really inform everyone in the listening audience about what's really going on. Because
Amen.
You're not going to get the facts from NBC, ABC, CBS. You're not going to get it from NPR because they and PBS, they won't give us the facts. We are literally being completely fed, literally, a bunch of baloney by the mainstream press in this country.
Frosty, I really need you to do me a favor. If you would, after the program, call me on my cell phone at any time this afternoon. I have some information I need to get with you. But God bless you for the program this morning, Frosty Woldridge in Golden, Colorado. Thank you so much.
Godspeed, Zeb.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go to the weather forecast real quick. I'm almost out of time. It says time is of essence, and I'm running out of it. Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company, sponsors of our weather, providing accounting services to the Mini-Cash area for well over 50 years. They are the professionals. They care. They can help you, your family, and your business. Tax return preparation, tax planning, business consulting, bookkeeping services, retirement planning, all of this and so much more from the professionals. Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company, with offices in Burley and Rupert. Right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Looks like increasing clouds for today and a slight chance of rain or snow for tomorrow. Here's a look at your weather forecast. We are looking at partly to mostly cloudy skies for today. Winds out of the west at about 14 miles an hour. Gusts as high as 25 miles an hour. Looking at a high of 43 for tonight. Mostly cloudy skies with a low of 32 as we round the corner for tomorrow. Chance of rain and snow showers in the afternoon. Mostly cloudy skies. We are expecting a high of 43. New snow accumulations of less than a half an inch possible. For tomorrow night, chance of rain and or snow showers, mostly cloudy skies, low of 32. By Wednesday, partly sunny, 40, and then by Thursday, mostly cloudy, 42. That's a look at your weather forecast for Zebeth Ranch.
Oh, I appreciate it, Gina. Thank you very much. And again, brought to you by people that really care. Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. And if you're starting a business or maybe changing over to a partnership or a corporation or whatever the situation, let them serve you. Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company with offices in Burley and Rupert. Another quick note I want to pass along to you is that for the best of life insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, and employee benefits, and personalized service to you, your family, and your business, don't forget our friends at Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. Todd and the rest of the folks over there, they will and they can help you. Please, they're dedicated and very accessible to helping you at Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. The number to call, make an appointment, 436-4424, Cameron and Siemens Insurance. Caller, I've got exactly 1 minute. Real fast, go.
Well, when you had Rick Manning on, I've been so busy this morning I wasn't able to listen to it, but what was his reaction to Bolton? And I know you're going over old news, but...
Well, basically, I think I hate to paraphrase what Rick said, I might leave something out, but Bolton and his new book supposedly coming out, it's not going to mean much because everything the Trump administration did was still within the time parameters of the money that was dedicated to Ukraine. And Bolton also has to be very careful, and so does the Democrats and the Republicans, asking any questions if he does testify, because a lot of that was with security from the government and talking about other governments. So I don't think it's going to happen myself, and I don't think Rick thinks it's going to happen either.
Well, Mitt Romney, of course, we know he's as foul as they get, but he is waffling now about having witnesses, and of course Murkowski and Collins, and then of course whoever else. You know, I just would think it would be nice to just be done with this as much as we could be. Of course, the Democrats are never going to quit. But I don't know. I know it ain't going to amount to anything, but, you know, we want to keep our president, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Randy, I hate to be rude to you, but boy, I've got to run to the news, old buddy. Thank you very, very much. News next from CBS. We'll be back in about 7 minutes. Wheels, it's all yours. Oh, here we go. Hour number 3, Zeb at the Ranch on a Monday, and brought to you by our major sponsor, your Magic Valley, Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations serving you with the best of all your tires, from the farm, the dairy, all the way to your SUVs and your pickup trucks. They've got all the tires for your safe driving. Don't forget, too, Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. And, of course, our friends at Greystone Crossing Senior Living at 1221 21st Street in Heyburn. Seniors living the good life with friends, and I urge you to call Matt and Kelly Wiggins over at Greystone Crossing. Seniors, if you want to take a tour of the property and find out, this is going to be the place for you. There's a beautiful facility, 12-bedroom home, and it's just a mile east of Walmart. 3 meals a day, plus snacks and housekeeping and local transportation, and great people living there. Yep, it's true. The number to call for a chance to visit and see the facility, 650-4979. Greystone Crossing Senior Living at 1221 21st Street in Heyburn. You give them a call today. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, I also want to go right to the phone line. I don't want to keep this man waiting. He's been on my program many times in the past. He is a retired United States Army Lieutenant Colonel and actually born in Iran. And we say good morning to Lieutenant Colonel Sargis Sangari. Sir, how are you?
Very good, and a major good morning to your listeners, and a happy New Year to everyone.
You know, before we get started on a lot of the intricacies and complexities as to what's going on in the Middle East, I saw on one of the information sheets that you are running for Congress in the state of Illinois. Is that correct?
Correct. I'm running in the 9th Congressional District of Illinois. I'm going to be going against the incumbent Democrat who's been here for 20 years in her seat. And I'm running as a Republican. People can find out about us on their votesangari.com, and we need all the help possible.
Well, God bless you in your attempt to be in the Congress. And, boy, we need more people like you, Sargis. I'll tell you, the whole world seems to be tipped upside down now with this absolute comedy called an impeachment against President Trump. What are your thoughts on that, by the way, before we get started on the other news?
You know, to me, it's the fact that when I look at it, we don't really have three co-equal branches of government. It doesn't exist. You have a legislator that sits in place for 20 to 30 years. When that individual dies, they replace them with their family member. And when the current POTUS came in and started pushing back against us, those individuals realized that he's about to destroy their meal cart. And because of that, it has more to do with ensuring that after President Trump leaves, that whoever is the next executive will not be able to push back. It's really the destruction of the executive branch's ability to affect policy or even execute it. So everything would have to go back to these individuals who are constantly embedded for years and years to come in the legislature, which is one of the reasons I'm running, to make sure that at least you got one person on the inside that's not going to allow that to happen.
Absolutely. Sargis, I don't even know where to start over the tumultuous activities in the past and also right now in the Middle East. Being Iranian-born, and you know the people, you know the circumstances, you know the potentiality of very serious effects of how the Middle East and Iran and possibly Armageddon. Bring us up to speed as to your opinion as to what's going on, what needs to be done, and where are we?
Well, what needs to be done was done, which was the killing of General Soleimani. General Soleimani had created an internal government inside of Iran, and he was starting to destabilize Iran's ability to possibly, on an international scale, to get it to another agreement. And it was so bad that in May of last year, Zarif, the foreign minister, handed in his resignation and told Ayatollah Khamenei that, it's either going to be me or the general, because every time I'm trying to do something on the international scale, the general is conducting operations that are completely against our operational need of what we're trying to do strategically internationally. So the Iranian elections are going to be this year. We're a few months away from the elections, and if Soleimani was still in power, it was very much likely that he was going to win the election. And by winning the election, he was going to use the proxies in a negative way to expand Iranian ability to affect the region. Iran uses terror and uses proxies more pragmatic than what ISIS would use or Al-Qaeda would use. It uses them in areas where it sees it has no other choice in order to be able to affect the wants and desires it has to have effects regionally. But Soleimani had already used it in a negative way so much that even Zarif realized it was becoming unproductive for them. When you had the U.S. embassy being under siege earlier this month, the problem it caused was Iran had spent billions of dollars through Zarif and other means in order to control the government of Iraq. And Soleiman, by using these proxies for his wants and desires to affect policy internally in Iran and abroad, was actually destabilizing the government of Iraq, which the Iranians had purchased really with their dollars. So Iran had no means or ways of understanding how to negotiate with outside world. When President Trump killed Soleiman, it reset everything. It gave us one baseline person to work with. That was the Iranian government itself. As of yesterday, you know that there were proxies that launched mortars against the U.S. Embassy again. But those proxies were so destabilized, they were so much hotheads on operating on their own that they were not considering Iranian foreign policy. Now that Soleiman is dead, Zarif and even the Iranian government has reached out and said we're ready to negotiate maybe for a new deal with the United States, given all the pressure that put on them. So we have one point of contact to discuss what U.S. and Iranian relationship is going to be over the next decade.
Let me ask you this question, Sargis. I have a very good friend that is from Iran. His name is Dr. Saeed Debistani. He's been on my program many, many times. And he has told me that we really need to think about the people of Iran instead of just the regime and the Ayatollah, etc. What about the people in your country, your birth country, Iran? It just seems like they're the same type of populace as to what was controlled by Castro in Cuba. Is that a good analogy?
Well, somewhat. Look, everybody in Iran wants to see a change, but that change doesn't mean that there's going to be a change that can, accept U.S. foreign policy. The best way I could explain it is you have people who leave their home countries, come to our southern borders, come to our country, and instead of completely accepting how our country operates, which is the main reason, they escaped and they came to this country, they fall back on their old beliefs. And a lot of them have socialist ideologies that just don't match with what our systems are in the U.S. Some of them don't even bounce off the Constitution of the United States. So, yes, you have to think about the people, but remember, it was the same people in Iran where you had, and I've had this discussion with you before, where you had Iranian businessmen, middle class, that was richer than even upperclassmen in the United States before the Shah was replaced, who traveled to France after eating breakfast in their homes in the morning in Iran, did shopping, did a late lunch, and then flew back and slept in their own beds. These individuals were given an opportunity, chose an Islamic Republic. Because for 50 years, going back to when the Sykes-Picot Agreement had been set up, the leadership of all the Middle Eastern nations, Sunni and also Shia, were basically squeezing the Islamists from being able to surface and take hold of the regime. So most of the people wanted Islam to be their leading guide when it came to their policies. It was the dictators that we had in the Middle East that had squeezed them. As soon as those dictators were replaced, guess what? Islam became the leading guide for these nations in the Middle East, to include Iraq. Once Saddam was gone, has an Islamic constitution. That means it doesn't matter what happens in the parliaments of the countries. It doesn't matter what bills they pass. They have to meet the dictates of Islam. And that means that the religious leadership within those countries will always have the final say, regardless of it's under the current regime that exists in Iran or whoever might come later. So Iran might be a little bit more secular, you might say, but at the end of the day, it's the Islamic leadership in those countries that will have a final say as to what the law should look like and who has a right to have access to power and be in leadership position. In Iraq right now, you will never see an Assyrian Christian become the parliament lead for Iraq because it's an Islamic constitution, and Christians are below what is the standard of individuals who should be given that ability to lead in Iraq.
Let me ask you this question, Sargis. The word nuclear in any sentence, in any phrase, always strikes a little bit of fear into people's minds. With all the money that the Obama administration sent over to Iran and the threat that now we've got out of that agreement with the Trump administration and with Iran, what are your fears about nuclear ambitions and how big they want to become in the nuclear age along with other countries? What do you think about this?
Well, Iran's always going to push for the nuclear option, and the reason for that is because it worked for North Korea. North Korea is a hermit kingdom, and it brought the nations of the world to the table because it pushed the nuclear piece. And the reality is it doesn't matter how you support Iran, it will always have that aim. When initially, under the Bush administration and Clinton administration, we realized that North Korea was having problems as far as being able to keep their people, even providing basic fuel for them. We gave them heavy diesel. What did the North Koreans use it for? The North Koreans picked up that diesel. They converted it into synthetic drugs. They sold those drugs in the markets in South America, which made their way to the American consumer, who paid millions of dollars for it. And then they purchased the technology that they needed, which were component pieces for missile technology with the boards, and sold them to the Iranians. So it doesn't matter what we give them in the long run. They will use it for the need and ability to get to the nuclear deal, because they know that a nuclear Iran, or the wants of Iran to be nuclear, is the only way you could bring the world politics to the table. Otherwise, they won't care. Hence is the reason why Iran was able to sit across the table from all the P+1 countries and negotiate a deal. And it will continue to do so in the future as long as it knows that's the only way that the world politics will care for it. But one thing that Iran has that I think it doesn't use well, it has the geographic location, ability, and the resources needed to really have effect globally. If there's any type of a change internally or on government-wise, with possibly what we call moderates coming into being after this election, and if we can get to a negotiated settlement with them, maybe a short term for now on ballistic, and separately on the nuclear piece, two separate agreements, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, a decade, we could get to a treaty with them. If we could get there, I think you'll see significant changes to Iran and the Middle East on the whole.
One thing I've wondered about, and you're the prime person to talk to about this, the way that the United States, through the President Trump and his administration, are administering the sanctions. Are the sanctions a good enough slap in the face to Iran to make them behave, or is it just a waste of time?
Sanctions are positive yes and no, depending on how our allies help us. Like when we put sanctions against Iran, we have to lift the sanctions on Port of Chabahar, because India, being a major partner for us, blocking against China's expansion, we have to empower them, allowing them to build a Port of Chabahar for the Iranians to run our railhead for Iran, current government, into Afghanistan, which was our way of putting pressure on Pakistan, that is harboring the Taliban, to realize we're about to bypass Port of Karachi, and they would have to come to the table and bring the Taliban to the table to negotiate with us for a settlement. At the same time that we put sanctions on Iran, we realize that we still have to allow Iran to sell us crude to Iraq. And we did that, lifting those sanctions at the State Department, because it played into our ability to have a kind of a neutral economic agreement on what will happen within Iraq, so that we did not completely collapse the Iraqi government. So as we put sanctions on Iran, we targeted, and we have used most of it, to be honest, to target our allies who have worked against us. But I think from what we've done, we finally brought the Brits to the table. We brought the Germans and the French to the table to realize that there will be consequences for them as they bypass the sanctions that we have put against them, against Iran. So this is more of a targeted effort to get our allies to help us ensure that the way we use sanctions doesn't completely destroy Iran's economy for its people, but targets certain segments of the Iranian abilities internally to allow them to have a internal transition to a much more comfortable government for us to work with.
Sargis, when you look at the overall scope of politics in this country and you look at the supposed leaders, if you will, of the 6 Democrats that were standing behind the podiums last week at a Democratic debate, which one or all of them perhaps do you fear the most that they may select one of those people to take over the presidency and try to defeat Donald Trump?
I mean, they're going to have a person who's going to come out through their primaries, and it's going to be the darling of the Democratic organization. Now, it's up to the people, the voters, to decide who should be the next lead for the United States. I think the current POTUS, with what he's done with the economic benefits we have achieved, especially for the minorities in this country, and what he's done security-wise, to counter some of the problems we're having with, believe it or not, the people I fought against on the battlefields of Iraq coming through our southern border, which is just ridiculous. I think the American people probably are going to make the right decision. It's the issue that we have is that there was an ideology of a change in the government of the United States to take it from its roots where it's tied to the Constitution and make it more of a governed by these type of bureaucracies. And these bureaucracies are self-licking ice creams that cannot change themselves internally. So you need to have either an outside change agent, in this case somebody like President Trump, come in, or you need to finally have the people that are the individuals who have sacrificed for those parties over the years to say, you know what, we're going to have to take hold of our party, bring it back to where it is, center left, center right, in order to be able to progress the country in the right direction. You need 2 parties for this system to work. Unfortunately, the current leadership you have is no different than the Middle East dictators I've had to deal with. They're entrenched. They sit in their seat. When they die, their family member replaces them. This is not what our country was based on.
One final thought, and of course everybody says that we shouldn't be there, we shouldn't be in the Middle East, we should get out at all costs of Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, etc. No more American troops. What are your thoughts? Should we totally pull out of the Middle East, or is it even feasible?
Look, there's nothing that the Middle East can give us that we don't have currently. We're self-reliant on our own resources. We don't need anybody there. None of them are going to teach us anything when it comes to democratic values or social requirements that we have progressed on. However, with that said, once we leave, somebody's going to have to replace us. Who's going to replace us? The Chinese and the Russians. And the Chinese and the Russians are going to be absolutely devastating to the global economy because they do not know how to manage those type of characters. The Chinese have tried to manage Africa, and they have failed completely. And most of the African nations now have realized that China is not interested about being a global leader, ensuring that others are brought up and are capable to be able to stand on their own. China just wants to come and use their resources for itself in order to keep its political party atop of the global lead. So America is the only one who can manage these characters. And in that process, if you want to have a world where we're not constantly engaged in these type of wars, backyard wars, which I called in the Daily Herald writings that I wrote, which is a global economy that is still functioning, then America has no choice but to be there. We don't need to be in the type of a format we are in currently because the battlefields have changed. Most nations are fighting within the region using proxy capabilities. But there's other means and ways for us to be able to have effects within the region. And I think the President Trump is now forcing NATO and Europe to take the lead in the Middle East, just like they have with Canada currently, to be able to affect the policies of the region for the benefit of the U.S.
You have been an outstanding friend of this program on the many times that you've been on this show. Ladies and gentlemen, retired United States Army Lieutenant Colonel Sargis Sangari, thank you so much, and please, sir, come back in the future. I appreciate it.
Will do. Thank you very much for the time and opportunity, and I just hope that with God's blessing that we're able to finally get to a position where we work as a team overall in D.C. to be able to progress the American flag and American interest within the regions that we're constantly in conflict with, rather than individual partisan fights that lead to nothing but more debts and more wasted resources for the U.S.
Amen. Thank you, Sargis. God bless you. I'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very interesting gentleman. I always appreciate having him on the program. Lieutenant Colonel Sargis Sangari, born in Iran and knows right down to the nitty-gritty what's going on or what needs to be done. Absolutely appreciate him. Want to remind you, too, about our friends with 7K Metals. You know, folks, I was introduced to 7K Metals this last fall, and literally through silver purchases, you can help yourself build your own financial security and your future. Now, it's real easy. I urge you, and I'm going to tell you this right up front, to contact these people and get more information about 7K Metals and silver that you can purchase, and it's sent right to your home. It's a great saving opportunity and a valued treasure for your family and loved ones in the future. Contact Lon Hardy at 312-8699 or Sharon Wilmot at 430-3259. Please tell them that I told you to call. And believe me, it's an investment in your financial security and wealth protection for the future. And besides that, it's a lot of fun. I urge you to find out more about 7K Metals silver purchases. Contact Lon Hardy and Sharon Wilmot today. Real quick note, too, that I want you to remember our friends at Patterson's Electronics at 421 East Main in Burley. Hello, Curtis and Lorena. How are you? They, of course, are open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6, and they've got all your electronic needs. All your home theater systems, surveillance cameras, car stereos, and speakers. They've got all the new models coming right on in. You better stop in and check it out. Complete sound systems, all the TV sets for you. And please take it from me, these are the folks you want to work with. They care. Patterson's Electronics at 421 East Main in Burley. Number to call, 678-6997. Right now, Wheels, we'll send it over to you for 3 minutes. I'll be right back.
And now, back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KBAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb Bell.
Thank you very much. Quick note right now, don't forget the great big January flooring event going on at Lee's Furniture, Floors, and more. You can really save money, a lot of money, on flooring for your home, whether it's carpet or whether it's the luxury vinyl. Oh my goodness, don't put it off. Huge selection of carpet, all there at Lee's Furniture, Floors, and more. At varied prices, depending about how much you've got in your budget. I'll tell you what, stop in and talk to these folks today about the carpeting and the luxury vinyl and all the furniture, everything for the beautification and comfortization of your home. Lee's Furniture, Floors, and more at 459 Overland in Burley. You stop in and see Jeff and the crew today. Right now it's time for the Idaho Legislative Update, brought to you by Handy Truck Lines. Of course, Handy Truck Lines established in 1928, and they provide transportation services to Idaho and all the surrounding states. And, of course, they're very pleased to be serving businesses in all these communities, and they look forward to a very big and prosperous future. And they also say a salute to our politicians in this great state of Idaho with the Idaho Legislative Update. And today, Senator Kelly Anthon. Kelly, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Zeb. I'm doing really, really well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come on the program, and I know it's a busy time up at the legislative session. Tell us a little bit about what your major task is right now. I mean, is there a certain priority or a certain concern that you're dealing with right now as one of our senators?
Sure. Well, and I want to say first thanks to you, Zeb. I mean, it is a busy time. It is really busy at the legislature. These 3 months are tough ones. You've probably heard me talk about it, but if you think about it, every year there are about 900 bills drafted. And by the time we get through the session, we've passed or made into law about 300 of those. So if you can think about 3 months' worth of trying to sort through bills and figure out what's the good ones and the bad ones, and some of the bad ones get passed anyway. But that's the scope and the load of work that we have. And so to have an opportunity to get on your program and listen and have callers and visit with you is pretty important to me. I really do appreciate it. Let me tell you about the legislature just a little bit. It is the first part of the legislative session, and so what we're looking at a lot is regulation. So for every law that's passed, or a lot of laws that are passed, the executive branch, the governor's office and his departments, add on to it with promulgated regulation. And so one of the things that's unique about Idaho is we get the chance to read through all that regulation on the front end of the session, and we have the authority under Idaho's Constitution to do away with it if we don't like it. And that's pretty unique to Idaho. So we're working through that. Now, one of the great things that's happened this year, Zeb, is that Idaho has actually been cutting regulation a lot. Compared to even a year ago, the governor's office working with the legislative branch has cut about 75% of regulation in the state of Idaho. And that's an important thing to me, because what you find is that Idaho business, farms, small business, we just do better when things are predictable, when you have as least amount of regulation as possible, and when you have low taxes. Mm-hmm. And that's a fact. And the fact that I say it's a fact because if you look at Idaho, we're growing right now. So one of the things we're dealing with, Zeb, is growth.
Are you still there, Kelly?
Yeah, can you hear me?
All of a sudden the line faded out, but go ahead. You ended up with the last word of growth, and then all of a sudden it faded out. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so we really are having a time of growth in the state. I think we've called it a curse and a blessing. We do such a good job, and trust me, there's still a lot of problems, but we do such a good job in kind of setting up an environment where business can do well and families can do well, that you find people wanting to move into the state next. And so growth is certainly an issue. I think it's probably the issue the state has to deal with. And what's come with growth, especially in our urban areas, meaning the Treasure Valley primarily, but it's also Coeur d'Alene, Twin Falls a bit, Idaho Falls, you're seeing property taxes going up. Mm-hmm. And so over the summer, I chaired a committee to study why is it that our property taxes in those areas in particular seem to be going up so fast. In some cases, they're telling me that in some of these neighborhoods in the Boise area, they've seen their taxes nearly double in recent years. Mm-hmm. So that's a big issue, Zeb.
Let me ask a question there, Kelly, that bothers me a little bit, and please don't hesitate to tell me how wrong I am, because I can take it. But I worry with what's happening in California, and I worry about the influx of people that are leaving the state of California, and Idaho is one of their prime target states to take up residency. I worry that we're going to turn into a mini California. How wrong am I?
You're not wrong. We should be absolutely vigilant about it, because we know that the policy decisions that the government has made in California have led to a lot of problems. High taxes, social problems, regulatory problems. I mean, if you look in our area, you have a lot of dairies that escaped California because they couldn't do business very well anymore. We've got to protect the ag businesses that we have, the other small businesses. Now, here's the good news, I guess. You can decide, Zeb. So recently, as of last week, Boise State University School of Policy in their political science department finished their 5th annual public policy study and kind of survey work for the state of Idaho. Some interesting facts are in there. Now, this is about 1,000 people in Idaho that have been given a survey. So take it for what it's worth. But you do find they have this year included in there, and you can go online and read all of this, that the number one place we seem to see migration coming from into Idaho is, in fact, California. It's followed by places like Oregon and other such places. What was interesting about it was, of those people who identified that they were not lifelong residents who had moved from California to Idaho, that they were 2-to-1 Republican. So you're seeing a lot of migration come out of California, and depending on the area to which they're moving. But a lot of those folks are fleeing California for the exact reason we're talking about, is that they realize it's a mess and they're trying to get out. And so they self-identify 2-to-1 as Republican, leaving the state of California to come to Idaho. So that's the silver lining, I guess. And you take it for what it's worth because it's one of those survey things. But no, Zeb, when things aren't working right and you leave one state to go to the other, we hope that you don't bring some bad thinking and the problems with you.
Well, my biggest concern isn't necessarily with the influx of the population, but I worry about the redistricting to the point where they're moving into the great state of Ada and they're moving into metropolitan areas, and I'm afraid that the rural influence and the rural needs are going to be overlooked. Am I wrong in my thinking?
No, it's absolutely a valid concern that we've got to be on top of. And I don't know, honestly, in many respects, how we can solve it, because under federal law, basically, it was actually some cases out of the 1960s, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that we can't have, for example, one senator from every county. There are some constitutional issues with that. So what that means is that our representation in the State House is based on population. And as populations grow in the Boise area, it means they will get more and more seats in the legislature, while those of the more rural areas will have larger and larger geographic districts with less representation, or representation by one senator or two House members. So a good example of this is Nevada. Go take a look at Nevada, and what you'll find is, the vast majority of their representation in the State House comes from the Las Vegas area.
What are some of the bills? I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, Kelly, before we run out of time. What are some of the bills that you're privy to or introducing on your own, or that are taking a lion's share of your time up there right now at the State House?
You bet. So one of the things that I've really been focused on since studying property taxes over the summer is the property taxes impact on some of the most needy Idahoans, the truly needy Idahoans that qualify for the circuit breaker program. So these are folks that are disabled, they're widowed or widowered, they have a very low income, they're over 65 years old, and so on and so forth. And there's a program called the Circuit Breaker. Probably some of your listeners are aware of it. It's a great program in that what we don't want to do is have the government taxing us right out of our homes.
Right.
And certainly that can be the case for folks in this category who have worked hard their whole lives, and now they're in a situation where their property values are going up, and that's exactly what's happening because of some of the growth. We want to make sure that we aren't, at a very minimum, throwing people out of their homes because they're disabled or widowed. And so one of the things I've noticed is in this study is that the actual use of that program is declining. So the folks who are actually qualifying and being able to get the benefit to help them with their property taxes is actually going down. And so that puzzled me, and what I found is that some of the way that we've set up the statute in Idaho is preventing people from qualifying when they really should be qualifying for that reduced tax burden. So I'm working on that. I'm working with Senator Dave Lent out of Idaho Falls and others, and I'm hoping that we can get some steam and helping to make sure that's corrected at a minimum. But what you're seeing, Zeb, is across the state increases in property tax, but again, focused mostly in the Boise area, where people who have homes that they got in the 1970s are now worth a small fortune in many respects, and it's hard for them on a fixed income to pay their taxes.
Why all of a sudden, and it seems like it to me, Kelly, has there been such an interest, if you will, in the production and growing of hemp? And what is that going to do to affect you and the rest of the legislative session for 2020?
Sure. So this is a really interesting issue. It's one that we all better tune into and get educated about. And I say that because of a couple things. One is I needed to get educated about it, and it took me a while to kind of catch up on the issue. First of all, I've always said, Zeb, in all my political stump speeches, wherever I go, and I mean every word of it, that I made kind of a commitment when I came to Boise that when I looked at a piece of legislation, I would ask one simple question, and that is this good for the Idaho family? Marijuana use is not good for the Idaho family. Now, I'm not talking about you get a prescription from your doctor for whatever medicine. I'm talking about recreational marijuana use is not good for Idaho families. I've seen in my own work as a prosecutor, I've seen it in many, many instances. This is not a great thing for people. And all you have to do is look to sister states who have really latched onto it to find out it's not been that great of a thing for them on so many different levels. That's a whole other topic. But what has happened is that industrial hemp, which is a sister plant, I guess you would say, to the more focused marijuana plants, and I say focused because they have engineered these marijuana plants anymore, Zeb, that they are full of THC. I mean, they have really tried to breed these plants and genetically engineer them to be very powerful drugs. Mm-hmm. Whereas industrial hemp is something that has 0.3% THC or less. And they are such a contrast in plants that if you go into Oregon as an example, farmers who grow marijuana want nothing to do in terms of geographical proximity to farmers who are growing industrial hemp. Why? Because if they cross-pollinate, you ruin both crops. But the reason why we're talking about this is because the federal government in the last U.S. Farm Bill has recognized industrial hemp as a farm product for which you can get a farm loan, mm-hmm. You can get support and so forth. So the issue is that in Idaho we have a zero tolerance for THC in any form on our books. So you followed that we had the truck come into Idaho with industrial hemp, and those folks were pulled over. They were charged with felonies in Ada County. So we've kind of reached this funny crossroads where industrial hemp on a federal regulatory scale has gotten steam, and Idaho absolutely prohibits it. So we are in a funny spot, and I think that's why I say I'm trying to become smart about it, because we may have to do some really good thinking about how we separate out industrial hemp versus your THC-packed marijuana product. And we want to figure out how we can regulate in such a way that we're not putting people in long prison sentences for having an industrial hemp in their truck as they come across state lines.
Right. I've only got 2 minutes left, Kelly, and I want you to elaborate a little bit on a bill that you are introducing regarding hospital bills and how they're presented to the patients and the payers. Explain that to us quickly.
Sure, just real quick. I think every single one of your listeners, I've rarely found anybody who has not had this experience. You go to the hospital, you give them your insurance, if you have insurance, and by the time you get through all the billing and the waiting for the insurance company and checking with the hospital and the paperwork, the hospital, in many instances, has turned you over to collections. We've experienced this before. You've been sued in a lawsuit. And unfortunately, in all that mix of paperwork, many people end up paying as much in attorney's fees to a lawyer somewhere in the state of Idaho than they actually owed at the hospital. And unfortunately, that's just a product of a messed up system that we're dealing with, in my opinion, in terms of billing and collecting. And so I am working with some important folks in Idaho, with other legislators, colleagues in the House, and we're trying to get a bill together that would simplify it so that when you go to the hospital, you get a single notice of who you should be expecting a bill from. There's a time frame for which they need to bill, and then there's going to be a limit on how much they can sue you get in a lawsuit for attorney's fees if they haven't followed the rules. Mm-hmm. So Stay tuned, but that's kind of the idea, is we're trying to make that so that Idahoans aren't getting ripped off that way.
Are you, at this point of the legislative session, happy with the way things are proceeding, or do you look for some rocks in the trail in the next couple of days on certain issues?
I think generally things are going well, because I'm happy that on the front end of the legislative session we've cut so much regulation. So I am pleased by that. And also Governor Little has done an executive order that says we're going to review 20% of regulation every year for the next 5 years. So that makes me happy. I think that the less regulation we have, and I should say that if we only have the minimum required, that's what we really need to keep people safe and to protect consumers, that kind of thing. The rest of it's fluff. And as I said, if you're passing 300 bills a year, you're growing the government. And the idea here is not to let the government grow out of control. And so I'm happy about that. But I think, Zeb, to your point, there will be rocks. There's going to be some rocks coming in. So stay tuned for that, and we can always visit about that as they come. But, yeah, there's always some rocky roads down through the legislative session.
I'll tell you, nobody does a better job than you do of explaining things right down to the gnat's eyebrow, and I appreciate it. Senator Kelly Anthon up at the Idaho Legislative Update. Thank you, Kelly. God bless, and please, I'll look forward to having you back on.
Well, thank you, and God bless you. And just for your listeners, Zeb, my office here, 208-332-1327. If you've got issues or questions, please give me a call.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
And, of course, the Idaho Legislative Update brought to you by some friends of ours that really are concerned about serving all of the Northwest. That's right. I'm talking about Handy Truck Lines at 400 West, 100 South of Paul. Number to call, 438-5071. They were established way back in 1928. And as I said, they provide transportation services to Idaho and the surrounding states. They are the best at what they do, and we thank them for sponsoring the Idaho Legislative Update, Handy Truck Lines. Thank you very much. Right now it's time for the weather. And the weather brought to you by Scarro's Meats at 331 North Road, Jerome. Oh, my goodness, you had better give them a call or go to their website and check out all the delicious meats. Number 324-7657. And the website, scarrosmeats.com. Oh, my goodness, if you've got a gathering or something going on with the family, all the marinated pork ribs and the tri-tips and all the different sausages and bacons. Oh, my, the delicious bratwurst, all of this from Scarro's Meats. Once again, that number to call, 324-7657. Right now, let's send it over to Wheels and Gina with the weather.
Looks like increasing clouds for today and a slight chance of rain or snow for tomorrow. Here's a look at your weather forecast. We are looking at partly to mostly cloudy skies for today. Winds out of the west at about 14 miles an hour, gusts as high as 25 miles an hour. Looking at a high of 43 for tonight. Mostly cloudy skies with a low of 32 as we round the corner for tomorrow. Chance of rain and snow showers in the afternoon. Mostly cloudy skies. We are expecting a high of 43. New snow accumulations of less than a half an inch possible. For tomorrow night, chance of rain and or snow showers, mostly cloudy skies, low of 32. By Wednesday, partly sunny, 40, and then by Thursday, mostly cloudy, 42. That's a look at your weather forecast for Zeb at the Range.
Gina does a great job putting our weather together for us, and we appreciate it. And, of course, brought to you by Don Scarrow and the crew at Scarro's Meats. 331 North Road, Jerome. The number again, 324-7657. They are changing the way we eat, one delicious bite at a time at Scarro's Meats. What have we got cooking for tomorrow? Let's check it out on our program sheet. We've got former Congressman Tom Tancredo from California coming on. I believe that Dan Kish is going to be back with the American Energy Alliance, and we'll check that out. And we're going to be talking to Kyle James about a scholarship that's available. Dr. History is going to be here. We've got a filled program for tomorrow, and you don't want to miss it. Want to remind you, too, about our major sponsor, and that's, of course, our Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you, and they've got tires for all vehicles. I choke to death because I'll tell you what, they can serve everybody on the farm, everybody on the dairy, the ranch. They've got all your loader tires, they've got backhoe tires, they've got all the skid steer tires. They've got tires for everything and every need. Your pickups, SUVs, trailers, you name it, it's all there. And the key word is service. They really take care of you. I know that if you need a service truck to come out to your farm or dairy, they're on the way. So don't forget your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations, also with the best in brake service and front end alignments and shocks and struts and batteries. They serve you. Lane and Rupert, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike in Jerome, the Twist family in Paul, Daniel on Pole Line in Twin Falls, and Trent on Overland in Burley. The best, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Wow. Another quick note. Hold on. I got to get this on the air real fast. I get my paper over here. The Soil Health Workshop is going to be taking place at the Best Western Burley Inn and Convention Center on Thursday, February 6th. Lots and lots of really top-notch speakers. And don't forget, for that Soil Health Workshop, the number to call to RSVP is 572-3369 or 436-4202. Don't forget that. That's going to do it for today. We're going to wrap it up and put it back in the box until tomorrow morning at 8:06. Zeb at the Ranch, and we certainly appreciate you folks tuning us in. We always end the program by saying the way things were are the way things ought to be. But the 4 words that mean the most to us when we wrap up the program, in God we trust. You take care, and we'll be back here tomorrow morning at 8:06. Wheels is my cover man over at the station. Zeb at the Ranch, God bless you. Have a good day.